Good afternoon, European Parliament.
Hello.
Καλημέρα.
Bonjour à tous et à tous.
Hello everyone. Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, goeiedag, bonjour, guten Tag.
Nice to meet all of you here in Strasbourg.
Good morning, everybody. Fellow students from all over Europe, ladies and gentlemen.
First of all, I want to say that I'm proud to be here with my team.
Today we see as a great opportunity to discuss the future of Europe with you, the other young Europeans, and we are really looking forward to it.
We all should care about our lives here in Europe. We should care about our home.
In a time when the world is dealing with war issues, refugees, ecological catastrophes, and a massive flow of true and untrue information every day, this is an amazing opportunity to exchange thoughts and opinions about today's issues and talk about the direction we're heading in for the sake of a better tomorrow. And I hope that after our discussions here, we're all going to return home motivated not to be so reserved, apathetic, or indifferent, but to use democracy to communicate, cooperate, and participate, so our lives won't consist solely of problem solving. I'm looking forward to our conversations. See you around.
Surely, it takes a lot of responsibility, intelligence, and courage to confront the situation we're living in. But we're here today to demonstrate that no matter how difficult the situation might be, we will rise together. Always united in diversity.
We would like to proclaim once more the motto of the current Bulgarian EU presidency. United, we stay strong.
Ja, nochmal vielen Dank von meiner Seite. Ich freue mich sehr, dass wir uns heute Morgen...
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that we can meet and have a discussion here. My name is Daniele Caspari. I am a member of the European Parliament and I've been a member since 2004. So this is my third electoral term. I come from Germany. I was elected there for the CDU. That is a member of the EPP group in the European Parliament, but the CDU in Germany. And I'm interested in trade and commerce. I've been there since 2002. In the committee, and I would find politics very interesting. I think it's really terrible if politicians discuss items which are very dear to their hearts, but are not necessarily dear to those hearts of the people who are listening to them. So I would like to know what you're interested in, what you think we should be doing more about, what we should do less about, what we should be criticized. So I would like to give you the floor.
Angesichts von den verheerenden Folgen, die muss ich aufstehen? Die militärischen Interventionen.
So, with regard to the situation of military intervention in Syria and the Iraq war, as a representative of a group which wants peace and freedom, gives support to countries such as Saudi Arabia. How can you provide situation? Because there's also a question about military intervention about this.
Früher, als ich in Ihrem Alter
when I was your age, in Germany, there was the first Iraq war, and there were many stickers at bus stops and said, "This is war, but no one's going to war." So this was a quote from Brecht. But what's the rest of that? And it didn't say it. The original quote said, "Imagine it is war, but nobody's going to war. Then war comes to you." That's the end of that quote. And that was the situation because, for example, before the war started in Afghanistan and there was international intervention against the Taliban, what we saw was that international terrorism came to our countries. The World Trade Centers wasn't blown up because there was any mistake. It's because the terrorists in New York brought it down. The train in Madrid in which the bombs blew up, many people died. That wasn't just any old person. It was terrorists who had their bases, had their cells and their supporters, and we knew where they came from. Look at the terrible attacks in London and the buses and the underground in London a few years ago. We know who did it. The war came to us, and the question is, what do we do? How do we face up to it? And the situation in countries such as in Afghanistan, and I'm afraid that we will also have to see the situation recurring many times. We have to see that the second Iraq war was certainly a mistake, but I'm also convinced that intervention in Afghanistan is right and justified, and that is why I think, as the European Union, we should be responsible and face up to this situation, particularly since we won the Nobel Peace Prize as well. Well, in Syria, we did nothing. And we're seeing how terrible and how the massacre of people is continuing now, and what the human rights situation is as well. And so what about weapons export, arms export? Well, I thought it was a good idea. For example, the Kurds, who were practically have been wiped out, the Peshmerga, who fought against the Taliban in the Kurdish areas, that we equipped them. We didn't intervene militarily, but we did provide them with weapons and arms so that they could protect themselves. And also the Yazidis, the minority in the region. The Yazidis, there was going to be ethnic cleaning as well. They were going to kind of wipe out a whole ethnic group, and if we hadn't helped them, then they'd all be dead. They'd have been wiped out. They'd have been massacred by the Taliban. So I think there isn't, black and white. We have to weigh things up very carefully, but I think we need to have a broader debate with our population about this.
Do you think that Russia and USA global activity will affect European connection and bonds between European countries?
Große Baustelle.
That's a big one. Well, I think we're looking at what possibilities exist. I'm afraid that we might be falling back into the situation of the Cold War, that is before 1989. Now, if we see that the Americans are kind of withdrawing from the international responsibilities under President Trump, but they had a policy which is where the Americans are really withdrawing from international scene and looking after their own country more and more. It started under George Bush, continued with Obama, and now it's continuing under Trump. But I am convinced that we are dealing with a targeted destabilization program against the European Union being pursued by Russia. So we've seen the situation of Russia in Ukraine, but this isn't the first time that Russia was so active. We saw that Moldova was actually de facto controlled by Russia. I mean, it is part of the country of Moldova, Transnistria, where the central government in Chisinau has no control. This country is controlled by Russian forces. It's part of Moldova, Transnistria, but it's under massive Russian influence. 20% of the area of Georgia is also obsessed, and that is of Ossetia. And military Russian is very active. Secondly, we've seen that Russia has very much influenced people's opinions in the EU. Look at the presidential elections in France. We know that Marine Le Pen received several millions via Russian banks, which were put in there by Russian oligarchs. Financial support came from Russia for Marine Le Pen. In Germany, for example, in January 2016, there was a debate in Germany about allegedly a girl who had allegedly been raped by refugees. And the young woman, well, we know that there was no rape, but in the Russian media, this was said in Russia Today. This is a broadcaster which can be seen in Germany. The Russian foreign minister, not just anyone, but the foreign minister, had said that there was a rape had taken place, and that this had been hushed up by the German authorities, but this was completely erroneous. And please, look at the situation in the internet and in the social media, because sometimes this information is provided in a very unidimensional way, in a one-dimensional way. So it's worth getting your information from the radio, from the newspapers as well, where there are independent, free journalists working, and not only through the internet, because today is a day of freedom of expression and freedom of the media in Europe. And I think we need to keep our eyes wide open, because there are attempts to destabilize Europe, and a lot of them are coming from Russia. And they're targeting our free democracy. And I think we need to have a clear, frank discussion with Russia about this.
Concerning the data protection breach from Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, and the whole incident, how far is the EU willing to go to protect the members of EU?
Auch ein Riesenthema.
This is also very important and a huge topic. Well, at European level, we're trying to make headway on this, because the regulation on data protection will come into force in a few days, on the 21st of May. And we need to be sure that foreign bodies, including Facebook, you said, that they have to respect our European law if they're providing services for European citizens in Europe. And of course, citizens have got to be part of this, because, of course, we're providing a legal framework. But I'm also one of those, if Facebook introduces new conditions, well, I didn't always read them carefully. I just said, I accept, press on that button. And so when you think about this, perhaps you've got a mobile phone, or when you use mobile or Facebook, who amongst you have really read and thoroughly digested the conditions that you accept? And so we do want to have data protection, and we need to have data protection, yes, but we need to have our own responsibility and accountability. We should read through carefully what we've accepted, what we've agreed to. And also we need to say that if data is released, then this data can have an added value. Thinking about medical data, for example, if we have research institutions, or if we've got, pharmaceutical companies who they collect vast amounts of information through mobile phones, through health apps, or whatever it may be. And I'm sure that we can do a great deal in the area of health and research to improve the situation for people in Europe. What are we going to do when we've got self-driving cars? We've got automated cars. But then, if these cars, if they're self-drive cars, do they belong to us because, we're sitting in them? Do they belong to the manufacturer because they produced them? Do they belong to Google because Google produced the software that drives them? I mean, how much data protection do we want? How much are we ready to accept? And what do we look at data? Well, it may be anonymized, but how can we make this data available to research institutions? 30 years on from the internet discovery, we're still at the beginning of a learning process, of a steep learning curve. Where we look at the situation, if you look at it, we tried to do something about data protection, but of course we've also got to be responsible for what data we allow to be freely available. And if we look at Facebook and Google, we've got to see what we accept by way of data protection. And we have sometimes agreed to give this data.
I think we all agreed on that first thing we need to improve is education. People that are informed are less likely to harm the environment because they know that every action they make will have consequences. We should persuade them that it's for them, that they profit from it. And also, we should invest in research and new technologies, because I think it's really important, and if we have new technologies, we can protect the environment better.
How are you going to put an end to nuclear power in Europe?
We had also a different solution, so we wanted also to improve the reactors of the nuclear power plants, which are too old in the European Union, but to reduce the nuclear energy step by step over the years. So we wanted to connect it with the clean and also sustainable ways of producing energy. For example, the water energy, the electricity, and also the air energy. But if this connection doesn't work, we wanted to reduce the nuclear energy step by step in around 30 years, that we can just use, or would just use, the clean ways of producing energy.
Terrorism should not be used, for example, as a tool to limit liberties. And yes. So in order to solve problems in our societies, such as violence or terrorism, we have to work on the roots. By doing that, I mean, if you look at the causes of extremism, we see that they are rooted in maybe social injustice, maybe isolation, maybe marginalization. And all of these issues, they're deeply concerned with religion, with ethnic profiling maybe, and all these inter-religious, intercultural conflicts must be avoided, so that extremists cannot use them as a tool to persuade people into doing terrorist acts, into being violent, and into radicalization. And I want to end this by quoting Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety will end up losing both liberty and security." And we cannot and should not accept to restrict human rights when security is at stake, when it comes to collective restriction of human rights. Thank you.
We can advertise on social media its cultures campaign, which is really important for everyone to get to know our culture and meet with our heritage and property. Also, we have to protect our environment, because our environment is a part of our culture, and I don't think that any of us in that room would like to go to see a culture that is destroyed, like we do nowadays with the environmental problems. Animals in the environment are a part too, and we should also protect them. Furthermore, a vision of the European Union is not completely accounted with the field of economics. It is not just a convergence of numbers and economies. It's a vision of convergence at all levels: institutions, values, civilizations. The second question of ours was what activities we would like to organize to promote intellectual dialogue. Actually, in that, we had a really long conversation about how American influence is a problem to our civilization. We have to be careful with what is being at social media, because we're free to say our point of views. But sometimes we just stick with some things that we want to look like, and that doesn't really our culture. Also, we should enhance our education with new technology, in which we can promote its culture, not only international, but also national culture, because we don't have to forget that except from the universal unity, we also have to remember our nations and our heroes of our place.
We want to have the European social security system, like a healthcare system that keeps people that are ill from becoming workless, and also that we pay money for poor or workless people, so that they don't get that they don't be forgotten by their state. The fourth thing we talked about was that Europe should keep its doors open, and that we still should accept new members if they fit in the requirements that we have for joining our union. And the last thing that we had, the fifth point, was that Europe should stay as its actual state and should not unite itself to the United States of Europe, as some people proclaim in these times, because many people in our group feared that their cultural identity or the language or the tradition could get lost or maybe could diminish itself. Yeah, that were our conclusions.
On s'est mis d'accord qu'il faut établir.
We agreed that we should provide refugees with safe and secure routes, and as was mentioned earlier, as Lynn mentioned, the safest and most secure route for the Mediterranean Sea from North Africa to Italy, and the other is from the Balkans Peninsula. We should therefore provide refugees for the Mediterranean Sea. We should provide vessels. We should provide vessels to get rid of the problem of illegal migration and get rid of those vessels that are very dangerous for refugees. With respect to the peninsula, countries should provide refugees with buses or rail cars so that refugees can be ensured safe and secure passage and do not die during their journey. The third proposal has to do with integration. This we all felt this was a rather complicated subject. A number of opinions were expressed. We ended up agreeing that we have to ensure that European citizens understand that when we speak of integration, we should all keep in mind that we're talking about a shared process, that there has to be mutual respect. And it would be a good idea, therefore, to provide refugees and migrants with courses so that they can learn the language, the local culture, the European principles, and also that Europeans should also become more familiar with migrants, their background, their cultures, and their lifestyles.
We talk about reducing the age of retirement. If we want young people to enter in the labor market, we need to reduce the age of retirement. Maybe, for example, 65 years old. It is basic for people to enter in the labor market. After that, we talk about the council. We would like to create a big council, a council which integrates representatives of educational systems, for example, secondary school or universities, and representatives of the companies, of the labor market. We think that it's very important to stick them together, to join together, if we want universities to adapt to the labor market. And finally, we want states to invest on young people. Young people, some people, they really want to create companies. They really want to invest, but they don't have the money. So the state should invest on young people. Maybe it's an expense, that's at the present, but it's going to be a success at the future. So these are all the points that we reached at the Commission, and thank you so much for your attention. I will be pleased to answer all your questions.